Hello, I'm Hank, and you're watching me play Kerbal Space Program 2 in the very first stages of the early access release. Now, as of this recording, there's no patches released for this game yet, but hopefully there's one coming soon, maybe around the time this video gets actually posted. The developers have said they're aiming for weeks, not months, as far as updates, patches, release schedule goes, but only time will tell. I do have quite a bit of experience playing Kerbal Space Program 1. I've got over 500 hours in it, which actually only puts it about in my top 10 of games played. But what I do in Kerbal Space Program 1, I like to build a lot of big dumb ships. I like to send them interesting places. I like to play campaign mode a lot. Like, I rarely ever touch the sandbox in that one. Like, if I want to build a big dumb ship, I gotta pay for it somehow. So I end up sending big ships of 60 plus passengers to Minimus and complete as many goals as I can, and make all that money, and collect a few million Kerbal Space bucks, and build my big, 500,000 part ships, send them up there. Now you may have noticed down on the bottom right hand side of the video, there's a little indicator that says speed times 10. I decided to add a speed indicator into this video here to give the viewers a little bit more of a sense of scale of just how long these missions are taking to accomplish. A lot of the other videos that I've seen so far posted about Kerbal Space Program 2, they all have some kind of time acceleration going on behind the scenes of the video, but none of them that I've seen so far actually show you just how fast they speed this footage up. I don't think it's intentional or anything like that, but I do feel like the speed up without an indicator kind of gives more of a sense of easier playability as far as the early access here is going, because I want to emphasize that this is not a fun time that we're having. All of us early access players here. This is very unstable, very buggy. I'm sure you've heard many complaints before if you've seen other videos, but this is very slow to play, and a lot of waiting and tapping the key and waiting. Now, as far as performance goes because of hardware, I don't have the most beastly rig in the world. I'm running a 2060 Super on a Ryzen 7 3700X. I got 16 gigabytes of RAM in there, so it should be enough to run pretty much every title. Not at the highest settings, but again, I cranked it down to low. I've got anti-aliasing turned on because I can't stand the blockiness on everything, and this game does look pretty blocky without any AA turned on. Now, I'm no genius with hardware or anything like that, and how good any of these new cards are compared to the old ones, but from what I've heard, the 40X series is not that much higher of a performance than the 30X series, and expecting everybody to run out and buying a 3080 or higher to play this game is a very bold move as far as early access demands go. But I'm not here to complain about performance or anything like that. I'm here to showcase what I have done over the past few days. Obviously, I'm still playing, as are many people, despite all the terrible performance issues and the glitches and bugs and everything like that. So, without further ado, the mission today is going to be to get as close as I can, possibly even land on the sun. Why the sun, you might ask? Because there is no heat mechanic yet in this game. So that means any kind of re-entry or getting close to something like the sun will have no effect, or should have no effect on any of the vehicles or parts or Kerbals or anything like that yet. So before they patch that in possibly the next update, let's go to the sun. Now, while we're watching some of my less than successful launch tests, I want to talk a little bit about the radial decouplers. I'm no radial decoupler expert, but I played with them a lot in Kerbal Space Program 1, and I could never get them to work 100% of the time. There was a lot of readjusting and, restarting back then too, so it's no surprise that the radial decouplers are less than nominal sometimes on this program as well. What I could never figure out was why sometimes they decide to snap and stay locked in place until ejection, and sometimes they just kind of hang there all loosey-goosey, collapse into each other and the rest of the vehicle sometimes. In the first one, I had games where, I just had to load it a couple more times and then everything would be straight and it would work fine. So a little more tedious on this one with the low frame rates and things like that, but Nothing I can't work around with a few more hours of resetting. The new decouplers did come with another bug, a little bit annoying, but sometimes it will make the object you're attaching to it face 90 degrees from what it was before. And this will have all kinds of crazy consequences, like it'll flip some other parts of your ships a little bit, and you have to go back. Don't undo. If you are playing this game and building a ship, do not use the undo button. Just reload a save. It will save you so much headache. But yes, back to the decouplers. Sometimes any parts attached to them because of that bug just fall off. They just are not attached when you go to launch. So you just hit the launch button, and before the game even opens up, like, you're crashed already. So you might be noticing now that this launch is a little more stable and a little higher than the last ones, having a bit of success here. You might be wondering what's underneath the fairing of this beast. Oh, everybody look under your seats. It's a new car! Yes, I know it's been done before, car into space, blah blah blah. But I don't think anyone's ever tried to send one to the sun before. I did want to have a nice vehicle to drive around on if I was able to actually land on the sucker. I started making this car out of just standard structural parts at first, and then I decided to change over to the new wing system, which is pretty excellent as far as making custom unique things. Like, as long as you can play around the engine enough, building in this game is going to be quite unreal. If the wings are any indication of what's coming later, like if there's other customizable parts as well, like even the wings, like I'm just thinking you could build so many stupid things with those wings. Like this car is nothing compared to what's coming. Like this plus the paint jobs of things like, oh, we're gonna see houses, buildings, you name it, it's going to space in this game. Like people are so dedicated already. Not to mention, since there's no campaign, like, why not send just random stupid stuff into space? And hopefully with some future patches and things that make it a little more stable and smoother to play, there'll be a lot more complicated vessels and things like that. Like, just getting this thing into space is the hardest part. Like, once I'm up there, it's easy peasy. The saves work most of the time, and it's a lot nicer feeling when you're playing, you know, frames per second that looks like movement. And on that note, it's time to concede that this craft made of way too many Xenon engines is probably not a great idea for playability of this game, as you can see the live frame rate right now. So back to the old assembly building I went. Started, you know, modifying the car a little bit and making some tweaks, rebuilding the entire stage basically. Fighting with a couple of things. I'd like to point out at this point, if you like to make things with symmetry, 3 times symmetry to be exact, it is very not working properly. One of the sides always just crosses over with the other side, and I have not found a way to control it yet. Just like randomly, struts will be attached halfway across the ship through a dozen parts. There's unfortunately no way to deal with that, so don't use 3 times symmetry. Stick with like 1 and 4 is pretty good. Mirror works pretty well. See right there, you can see the problems with those radial decouplers where just sometimes they'll just come not attached. So the major redesign on this part here was, instead of using a couple of big engines, I used a bunch of smaller vector engines, which are probably the best engine in the game still. And just 2 powerhouse stacks surrounded by a couple of thrusters. Figured I'd sacrifice a little bit more frame rate because I was getting terrible frame rates anyways, for lack of a lot of parts on the bottom, which were not helping with the wobble and things like that. Now I'd like to draw your attention once more to the indicator in the bottom right, the playback speed there. It's going to jump up to 50 here in about 10:10 on the video. I just wanted to, once again, for scale, just how fast this is being sped up here in comparison to what you're actually going to be playing. 10 minutes of footage, which is around the right now mark of this recording, is 12 seconds. So that entire time you've been watching this video, 12 seconds in real life, if it was sped up. That's about how fast we're talking scale here. So it's really, like, if you're on the fence about getting this one and looking for some indicators on how well it's going to perform, like a 2060 Super, like appropriate rig built around it, and this 50 times speed right now is what you're seeing. You'll also notice how wobbly the craft seems right now when it's flying around, going back and forth, but take this time to point out while I'm talking about the speed up rate that wobble, you have to spot that at 1 to 2 frames per second. So it's minutes going back and forth between an up and down wobble, say, or a left to right, and it really can sneak up on you if you don't notice it. So since I did finally notice it, back to the drawing board we go. Alright, here we go with another attempt, another slight redesign of the second stage and a complete redesign of the first stage once again. Unfortunately, I forgot to hit record, so I don't have footage of the assembly of this one here completely. You'll see a little bit of a paint job and adjustments here as I prepare for a bunch of launches. Now, I know these crafts don't look like the most stable things in the world, but those helium tanks that you're seeing at the top that are all bubbled together there, they're pretty light. And so they only have the one engine up there. Like, the tip over factor is not as big of an issue as it might seem. And again, with the low frames, it's harder to spot the wobble, but I was confident, I knew they were going much straighter than the last design, so I was onto something here. Just look at that, we're halfway out of the atmosphere already. We're gonna get to the sun today, maybe. But I clearly still need more separation boosters. Here I am trying some structural parts on top of the decouplers to get the boosters a little further away. Let's see how that goes. Well, maybe if we spend it off some gigantic towers. Very promising, this one. At this point, I've definitely got the booster situation figured out. It's just that stability I gotta fix. Ooh, that one would have made it without the wobble. We're getting really close here to getting back to space. Alright, 16K, we're getting really close. I got a good feeling about this next one. I'm just gonna not play with the controls as much. Just give it a little nudge forward to start and then go straight up, I think. Okay, not the end of the world. We've got way too much fuel on this thing anyway, so let's just keep going. See what happens. Maybe we'll make it. Okay, it's a little hard to control, but it's performing pretty well for such a lopsided vehicle. Oh yeah, like you didn't see that coming. Okay, this next one, it's gotta be the one. No, not this one either. Alright, so this launch right here, I decided to just click up on the nav and go take a shower. I actually went showered for 20 minutes, and then I came back into the room just in time to hit the next stage button. This is all bot control. And then I waited another 10 minutes before I even touched the wheels or bearings at all because it was going so well. But I knew eventually I had to start nosing over to the side or this orbit was all going to be for nothing. So I turned off SAS, I turned off RCS, and I just kind of let it tip and hope for the best. Now at this point I was starting to get pretty excited. I can save, I'm out of the atmosphere. Just like to mention as well that saving while you're under any kind of thrust, not recommended. You can turn off your engines if you want, but unfortunately I've still had the game just rip apart my vehicle under any kind of forces, loading from a save. So you gotta get in a spot with no forces acting on it, hit that save button. And even then you're not 100% safe because there are numerous save glitches, which I'll probably get into a little further along in the video. But for now, we've got another stage to separate and a little bit more delicate maneuvers to make. Feels so nice to leave behind that lag factory of all those vector engines. It's going to run so much better from this point out. So I went with the black car this time. It looked kind of like one of those cars that you see the villains in the movies and stuff drive. I'm not much of a car guy, so I don't know the models or anything like that, but I also wanted to keep it a little sporty, so I gave it a new engine on the top in the form of a large battery, and gave it a little bigger tires in case I actually wanted to, drive it anywhere, especially considering the target location where we're going. I don't think those little tires would hold up to the sun's gravity very well. And speaking of things I don't know the proper names for, what I'm attempting to do here I like to refer to as the backwards half slingshot of the moon. So I'm going to try to use the moon's orbit around Kerbal to slingshot a little bit towards the sun and save a ton of delta V hopefully in the process. So I'm no rocket scientist or anything, but the general idea is when the moon's going one direction, you go towards the moon, get sucked in by it, let the moon pull you along its orbit a little bit, and then you shoot out the other side a little faster than you went in. And depending what kind of burns and stuff you do towards the moon, you can get a lot more thrust out of it. So you're basically just pushing off the moon, like stepping on it and jumping in a direction, going faster. And now comes the obligatory part where I say, since I'm probably wrong about a lot of those descriptions and everything, like please somebody smarter than me, just go type it out in the comments, get that buzz going, and how do gravity assists work? Is this even a gravity anything? Tell me the names of stuff, please. I don't want to have to look it up myself. All I know is I've done this kind of burn before. It does what I think it does. Trust me. I have zero qualifications other than playing a lot of the first game. See, you just kind of get into orbit, point your craft at the moon, and then what are they calling cars? Drifting? Is that drifting? I think it's drifting. You go like not the direction that you want to go in order to be going that direction in the future. It still tells me we're going to crash, but we're not going to crash. We're past that point. Got some nice burn here going around the sun, taking advantage of that new physics time warp so it doesn't take 100 years in real life. As buggy as the time warp might be, it works. It's there and it's functional. So that's something that's not in KSP1 stock. I'm aiming to do a higher pass first to see if I can see something interesting. And there's definitely something going on. Okay, it's starting to get a little annoying. Let's see what I can do about this. Maybe in here somewhere? There we go. Flight camera mode. V. Letter V as in Victor. Oh, that's much better. So much easier to control too without so many parts. Alright, nothing terribly exciting going on here. Let's try to get a little closer. Unfortunately, on my next pass, I miscalculated a little where the actual surface of the sun is. The surface is about 600 kilometers above the ground. So, guess what? At this point I was feeling pretty tired, but I was kind of, proud that I made it this far, so I wanted to get a little closer to finish it off and, get a couple of nice screen captures for Steam and wherever, and maybe even turn this all into a video if I decide to actually put the effort in. Saying goodbye to the last stage. Thank you for getting us all the way here. You are the most stable one of all. And now just a couple more tedious burns, get us nice and close. And do a couple of card tricks on the sun. As you can see, I left Bob with a little bit of fuel left over in case he needs to do some maneuvering in case of any kind of future rescue attempt, which is very unlikely because there might be heat added by that time. Unfortunately, I never was able to make this thing land on the sun. I kind of knew that going in there it wasn't going to be able to happen because the speeds are just too great and I wouldn't be able to cobble anything large enough together in the current state of this game yet to actually get enough thrust to land on the surface of the sun, get slow enough if it's even possible. Full disclosure, if this video didn't seem long enough still, there are a bunch of other attempts that didn't even make the cut of this video because it would just have been too long. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you liked what you've seen here today, and I leave you with my EVA attempt as Bob heads towards the sun.